Hi, I'm Louise Tilley. I'm going to be joining Prosper on the Online Prosperity Show. I'm really excited to talk about how AI is impacting content development and how you might be able to use it to improve and scale your content processes.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we have a special treat for you. Our guest is none other than Louise Tilley. Now, Louise, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thanks. How about you?
Absolutely. For me, it's an exciting day. You know why? I'm in the face of, like I was saying, celebrity, a master storyteller and a marketing genius. So all hail to you.
Thank you.
It's not every day that you get an expert showing up and say, I can give you a bit of your time. So I really appreciate having you on the show today.
No problem.
Absolutely.
No worries.
Absolutely. Now, for those people that are wondering why I'm fanboying on Louise, I'll tell you something. As a kid, she was obsessed with writing stories, and marketing just became a natural career move for her. With a background in content development, her work has actually reached audiences over 2 million and has been featured in places like Women's Health and Teen Vogue. And all this has been happening since 2019, where she's been rocking the digital transformation world at Sage Group. And here she helps industries like defense, transport, smart cities, and a lot more to actually navigate their digital journey. So you've literally come across her work, whether you knew it or not. And that's the kind of person that we've got in front of us today. And I discovered a fun fact, about Louise. Apparently, she can actually clap with one hand. We're going to have to ask for that. Maybe I'm going to throw in a couple of jokes here and there, and we're going to wait for that ovation to come from Louise. Now, get ready for an episode that's going to be packed with insights, laughs, and we definitely just going to be talking about how AI has come or has not yet arrived in your world, and how luminaries like Louise are dealing with it. But Louise, I'm talking about things I know nothing about. Maybe you can share with us a little bit about your journey into marketing and what literally sparked the passion for storytelling and content creation.
Yeah, so as you kind of mentioned, I started out with storytelling really early. It was something that I enjoyed doing back when I was in primary school. I liked to just, do a bit of creative writing. And it was a good way to keep me occupied for a couple of hours. So, sometimes of an evening, that's what I do. Other kids might be coloring or even playing video games, that kind of thing. And I was either reading or writing stories. And that kind of, maybe went on hold a little bit when I went away to high school. I still wrote, but I didn't do it probably as much. And then, going to uni, obviously you spend so much time writing essays and researching and reading that, the creative side, I probably didn't get to spend as much time doing as I would have liked. And then what I did find was that was a side of myself that I, could still embrace through other means. So when I moved, when I went to uni and I was studying communications, for instance, there was always a way to tell a story through that. And public relations really attracted me for that reason. My first job out of uni, I was working as a communications officer. And so, as I kind of have gone through my career, there's always been a comms or a content component to the work that I've done. And now I'm really lucky, like I worked for a fitness company and I got to do some incredible content development there, and worked with quite a big team in terms of content. Now I work in a much smaller marketing team, and that's probably where I'm really lucky. I've had that broader experience developing content. So I've got kind of that background and that storytelling ability that now means I can share that with other people in my team, or I can utilize tools like AI to, you know, get to that point faster and develop that content a little bit faster.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for telling us that story
Yeah,
of your
nice.
beginnings. I mean,
Yeah.
even though you want to paint them as humble, but I could literally tell you there's nothing humble about being or developing the skill of storytelling at a early age, you know, because
Yeah.
so many people can't even string a sentence together. And, you know, as as a young person, if you could literally write and find that as a passion, I think you know, that is something that obviously so many people would have wished they had. But while you were growing, didn't you have people telling you that, she's such a storyteller, you know what I mean, like society would obviously, they love the stories, but I, I I'm hearing my little kids in the background telling stories, and I'm just thinking,
Yeah, it's interesting because my dad in, you know, his local area is well known for being a storyteller, and I was, you know, I'm one of two kids. So my sister, being the older one, was always, she's going to hate me for using this term, but she was always a bit more of a chatterbox. She spoke a lot more. I was the quiet, reserved one. But I think my kind of creative outlet and my way of getting stories out was through writing. And, you know, as I kind of came out of my shell a little bit as I got older, it's something that I still do now. And, you know, sometimes that can be a challenge because I go off on this really big, long story and then I get lost along the way and have to remind myself of what my point was. There's a great turn of phrase that's, you know, land the plane. And so in the back of my head, I'm always going, land the plane. You know, what are you trying to say here?
all right, absolutely. You know, I'd love to be a fly at dinner table when you guys are all together. You know what I mean? You've got the sister chatterbox, and if you say she talks a lot more than you, I can only imagine the level of intensity that looks like. And dad on the side as well, as it's
Yeah.
just is a mom in the picture, or what was she like?
There
Yeah.
is, yeah. And she, you know, I would say that's probably where I get my sort of quieter side from. That being said, you know, it is a really big thing for our families. Like we've all kind of grown up and got our own families now, but when we come together at holidays or, you know, for birthdays or something like that, we will often sit around the table for hours at a time and talk. And I know that's not hugely uncommon, but it really is an absolute joy whenever we get to do that.
Absolutely. Well, now there's a complete story right there now with the
Yeah,
whole family in there. I wonder who
that's
does the
it.
cooking and the cleaning, because
Yeah,
everybody wants to be heard and
yeah,
things.
that's it. It's, you know, you're quickly rushing to clean up afterwards so that you can, you know, not miss a minute of the conversation.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
you could maybe be not the chatterbox of the family or whatever it is, but you've taken your skill set to tell stories that obviously inspire in different spaces and places like that. Now, my question is, somebody might be thinking, wait a minute, we do that with my family all the time. Is there a difference
Yeah.
between telling stories and writing the stories?
I don't think so. I think what you're trying to do essentially is you're trying to communicate a message and you're trying to um, share a part of yourself. And I think that's particularly relevant with smaller businesses because it's that you know, that authenticity and that connection that, you know, we're craving more and more, and that's what is such a big selling point for like a smaller business, for instance. In our case, for, you know, the business that I work for now, it might be more so we need to tell a story to be able to show, you know, the complexity of the type of work that we're doing. And that's a really nice way to convey, you know, and it's a really important part of marketing is being able to connect with your audience and the people that it's going to strike a chord with. You know, much like when you're sitting down to share family dinner, you're probably sharing what's going on in your life and you're hearing what's going on in theirs. And then, you know, you're taking that and feeding off that, you know, in the literal sense, as real engaging conversation. And that's kind of what you want to be doing through your marketing as well.
Absolutely. I quite like that. And we'll obviously jump into that a little bit later, but we've got to land this plane. And speaking of landing the plane, you went to Adelaide and you decided, yeah, I've had enough of these people around dinner table. I'm gonna go on and go at it by myself. What's that story there?
Yeah, so I mean, I lived a little bit here, there, and everywhere. My family are all in New South Wales. I went away to boarding school. My sister and I both went to boarding school through our high school years, and then I lived in Victoria briefly while I was going to uni, and then I moved up to Queensland and did the rest of my uni up there, and then started my career in Queensland. And then I moved to Adelaide a bit over 8 years ago. And yeah, I sort of was lucky that, I'd been working for myself, and I managed to kind of keep that client base when I first moved to Adelaide. But I really struggled. And I think anyone that's worked in small business or that's worked for themselves will know this. You know, you spend so much time in the business that getting outside of it can be, you feel a little bit guilty if you're not working in it and you're taking time out. It's important. I want to stress that because it really is essential to get out and see the world a little bit. But I found, that I really struggled with not having a friend base around me that I had previously. And so, I made the move from, working for myself to going back into a business so that I could have a team around me, so that I could, I'm an advocate for working from home, don't get me wrong, but it was really nice to spend some time in an office and spend time spitballing ideas with other people and working on things together as well, and actually seeing them in the flesh.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations. I mean, obviously, when somebody gets to a part when they realize this is not me, and have the self-respect of letting go. Let me tell you something. I'm seeing a lot of bloodied hands of people just holding on to something that no longer serves them, and they can't literally shake hands with new clients because their hands are all in there. So you get the picture, right? So
Absolutely.
in that respect, I mean, seriously, hats off to you for having done that. And the fact that you say, you need to leave the desk and things like, I didn't think we were allowed to go anywhere else. So.
Yeah, that's it. And I think when you're, whether you're working for yourself or whether you've been in a business for a period of time, we invest so much of ourselves in the work that we do, that it can be really hard to take a risk and to do something different. So when I made that move, I'm not going to say I was 100% concrete, crystal clear in my mind that was the best move for me. But, that's what decision making is. You make it based on what you think is right at the time. And if it turns out to be the wrong move, then you adapt. I was really lucky that it was a great move for me, professionally. And also I met some absolutely incredible people that I'm still very, very good friends with now. And then, even when I've since moved jobs, and I've come to work where I am now, that ability to, build a network within the city that you're living in has also been really beneficial.
Absolutely. I mean, with the kind of work that you do, you're telling stories. At least you have to be telling it to someone, you know what I mean? Bouncing off back and looking at their reaction. If I use these words, what are they? Do you know what I mean? I think that is a part of your job. And you can only imagine if I walk into this office, if I don't reach out to nice people like you and say, hey, let's spend 45 minutes and record something together. I'm stuck with 5-year-olds and 9-year-olds and and they want to
Yeah,
tell me their stories. You know what I mean? So,
that's it. Yeah.
but you grew up on a farm, right, Louise?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
my
obviously that,
parents,
yeah.
sorry, you go.
Absolutely. So you growing up on a farm and obviously learning via correspondence, and from what you have told us, the kitchen table was everyone all over you.
Yeah.
You definitely needed to cut that and be around other people. Could that have been part of it? We can not tell them this part, all right? It
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. So yeah, I grew up on a farm it's about an hour and a half drive from the nearest town. So obviously, that's a 3-hour commute to go to school. So not super practical, which is why I did my primary school years through correspondence, and then I did my high school years through boarding school. So correspondence in this day and age, it would be so much more digital, but back then it wasn't. And my mum was great at being very disciplined with, this is your start time, this is your break time, this is lunch, and this is what time we finish at the end of the day. And so you knew when you stepped foot into the room that was our designated schoolroom, like you were doing your work when you were in there. And that's set some really great habits for me when I worked for myself, but also when I, work from home now. It's like your work hours are your work hours. It was challenging at times because particularly in those early years, you're not spending your entire day with a classroom full of other kids. And so I think teaching and school is a really interesting thing because obviously everyone learns slightly differently. So sometimes, hearing something explained to one person, they might get it straight away. Someone else needs it explained in a slightly different manner. And, you don't have that when you're a one-person class. But I think what was good about that is, you kind of learn to function on your own a little bit. But then when I was able to go to high school, for instance, where I was in much larger classrooms, you kind of learn where you fit in, I guess.
Absolutely, I quite like that because once what your style is and who you are, it makes it a whole lot easier for you to and I can only believe during that time your wish or your aspiration was to take over the world or change the world or something of that effect, and that's what you're now doing at Sage Group, where you're literally specializing in industrial digitalization services.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what sort of work you're doing there and why it's so important for people to know?
Yeah, for sure. So, just a fantastic success story for Adelaide. It was started out as, a bit of a side project by the founder. And it has, we're actually celebrating 30 years this year. And, the Adelaide business has grown massively, but we now have offices in almost every state and territory around Australia. And then we have offices in India as well. I guess a good way of explaining what it is that the business does, we've got multiple business units, but it's industrial digitalization is really the tag. And so, we might work with food and beverage manufacturers, for instance, but then we also work in defense spaces, transport, water, those kinds of things. So many of the systems that you would interact with every day, the brains that run those systems are the types of things that our organization works with. So, a simple, I guess, example is little things like, knowing how long it's going to take you to get from point A to point B on a road, and that sort of average time, travel time, for instance. We're sort of behind systems that help filter that information in. it covers, I'm completely underselling the business here because it's very, very complicated, some of the work that we do. But that's the great thing about working in marketing for a company like that, is we are very rich in examples of work. And sometimes that can be a little bit difficult because it means we do some really complex projects across a wide range of areas, not just geographically, but in terms of different industries. And then the actual work that we do as well, it can cover a huge range of problems, from something that seems quite simple to something that seems really complex.
And I mean, obviously, like you say, it's all about communicating. And if you can tell that story to some everyday person, like you say, distances or things like that, and whatever that then helps people to make sense of their day to day. I'm supposing there's a need for that because you're in defense, you're in all those big places, you know what I mean? I mean, the army wouldn't just have you guys as a contractor if what you were doing was not important, and if you were not literally telling that story. And that's where they need people like you in play, moving forward and things like that. But as a copywriter and content creator, how is it that somebody can find that unique story? Like you're saying, what we're doing is obviously different and everything else. For a small to medium business, I might just be yet another digital agency that just is on the thing that might differentiate me is my brand colors, and maybe that my logo is slightly looking to the left, and that's different to what all the other agencies have on there. So
I know what you mean. Look, I think something that this is probably not a unique idea by any stretch, but I've recently started, so quite often when I'm developing content for the business, I interview people within the business, and sometimes I'll interview clients to be able to really understand, what's the challenge, what was the problem, or what was the opportunity you were trying to, overcome, or that you were trying to develop here, and what did we deliver? And sometimes it can be really hard to get clear on what the key message is that you're trying to communicate. And I've started recently asking people, how do you describe this to someone who's never worked in this business and who doesn't know what we do? And I was saying to someone just yesterday, actually, I've been to witness a fantastic project, and it's something that had been worked on for multiple years. And while we were talking through and getting into the technical details, I got a little bit lost along the way. I'm like, okay, I follow up to this point, but this other part I'm not fully understanding. And I said, how would you describe this to someone if you were having a beer at the pub and, you were being introduced to someone and they asked you what you do? And the really nice thing then is you see people relax when they're asked that question, because we explain things at a level that we think people are going to understand, whether that's a conscious thing or not. And so when there's an opportunity, I guess, to really get down to the simplest explanation, that's where you start to pick up what a key message is.
I quite like that, because so many of us just think whatever comes, or the way we show up in the business is what people want to know. But that's obviously off the now, how can AI or artificial intelligence help us bring these messages out?
So I think a really great way to start is, and again, depends very much on your starting point. If you're in a business where you have an idea about what your customer base is and what your what your market share is, all of those kind of things, if you know that, great. Lots of us probably don't know that, or maybe haven't kept that information updated over a long period of time. AI can be a great tool for doing a lot of research, and giving you summaries of, copious amounts of information, which, no one has time to read, to spend 6 hours every evening for 3 months, doing their research. I wouldn't say to rely on, that research purely and a short summary from AI as your only bit of research, but I think it's very helpful for speeding up some of those processes. As you've probably picked up, I like to tell a story, but I tend to go a long way in doing it. So sometimes, I'm sure this is not a surprise, getting a really short version of something can be difficult. So I, rely on a lot of AI tools to be able to be a bit more clear and concise in the way I write as well.
Absolutely. So you using AI to lend the plane?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, I think one of the other things, I'm sure we've all struggled with this at times as well, is a starting point for something when we're writing, whether it be a news piece or a blog article or sometimes even a social media post. It's like, I know I want to try and say this, but I need a hook. How am I going to get people to read past that first line? And AI can be helpful for generating different options. And you might not use the very first one, but you might pull something from that and then refine, and then, keep refining until you hit a point where you're like, yeah, actually, that's exactly what I was trying to say.
Absolutely. So writer's block is now a theme of the past. Then you can't just be sitting there looking at the cursor, just going, "Hey, you get started."
That's it. It's nice to be able to, do a bit of a brain dump and say, like, I just need you to sort through all of this and help me get to a point where I know exactly what I'm trying to say and how, in a much faster space of time.
Absolutely. Now, when I was obviously studying marketing and everything else, copywriting has rules and laws and regulations and people and cults and people you worship, that, I don't know, that's just the way it's set up, and or is it that copywriters want that sort of, perspective, to people that there's just a certain place they go to and they get that, they draw that inspiration and things like that, right? So with that being said, now, does that put you at a better advantage to inform the AI what to do based on knowing those rules already and how to actually conjugate, formulate, and put together, those hooks that you're talking about? Because if I just showed up, and at least now you can talk to AI, you'd be like, "Hey, you write me a message," and they're like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one of my closest friends is a graphic designer, and we will sometimes just randomly send one another, a great meme that we've seen about AI, and then inevitably one of us will reply back then with, AI is taking all our jobs, and then a laughing emoji. And look, I'm not dismissing the value of AI at all, but I think it's so much more valuable when you do know how to prompt it well, and you do know how to, I guess, to leverage it as much as you can. Because my experience as someone that comes from more of a written background, as opposed to someone that comes from a design background, we prompt things in completely different manners. And that's based on that knowledge and experience that we have. And as sophisticated as these tools are, I can't tell it to do something that I don't know is actually a thing to prompt it to do, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. See, you would have grown up on a farm, right? So was it crop or animals that you guys had?
Bit of both.
All right. And what sort of animals were they? Sheep? or
Sheep
horses?
and cattle. Yeah, sheep and cattle.
Was there any horses in?
Yep. My sister and I both rode horses.
Absolutely right. So if we would say, hey, let's hang out, and you'd be like, you know what? Why don't you come around and let's ride horses? I'll be looking at that horse going, I'm not sure what we're meant to be doing here, but you would
Yep.
just go and settle up and you'd actually start what do they call that? Trotting and everything, and you're like, come on,
Yep.
let's go. And I'll be like, where do I start? You know?
Exactly. And I think that's a great analogy, because that's very much the case. You approach something with the knowledge that you have, and you don't know what you don't know. And so, getting the most out of a tool is only as good as what you know to ask for.
Absolutely. But have you ever surprised yourself? You know, I've been on a call with someone and then I just go in and then I just go, wow, okay, this is something, because it just gives you a whole rundown and you're like, that
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever surprised yourself with some sort of stuff that you would have maybe done or prompted it and went on? Because now I know with copywriters, you've got, what do you call that file that you save all your nice work that you have done?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you might be talking about a portfolio, or in some cases, it might just be one of those. There
Swipe
is a
file,
term for it
swipe
as
file.
well. Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you might have a swipe file. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I now have a swipe file of prompts that have done well. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So
Nice.
I can now retrieve from those and I'll be like, let's use that. Let's see if
Yeah.
that's gonna and then
And I think
massage
that's
it. Yeah. Have you ever surprised yourself with something that you came up with?
um look, I think when I first started playing around with some of the AI art tools, that's probably where I had a lot of fun initially.
Right.
Um, and even seeing some of the examples that were available to look at, and to draw inspiration from. Yeah, that was a great afternoon where I just spent time playing around with things, and made cartoon mini versions of myself, and as Little Red Riding Hood and things like that. That was a great fun that afternoon. I definitely kept those prompts, because I'm like, one day I might write a book and I might want this as my character.
Absolutely. I quite like that because at the end of the day, when you obviously, you see, it's with everything, garbage in, garbage out. If you input garbage, you also come up with nothing. And so many people are just looking at it and not really seeing the use case of it because they
Yeah.
don't know what it should look like when they have
Yep.
arrived. But the fact that you've been writing stories, now you have a tool that can take you there, etc., etc. So I quite like that. Now, what would be the
Yeah.
best way that maybe, if any, do you have a way that people maybe connect with you and maybe learn from you what it is that you're doing and maybe just follow on with your journey, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Louise Tilley, so you'll be able to track me down. I Most of my writing is done through Sage Group now, so that's predominantly where you find a lot of content, and a lot of I'm behind the scenes of a lot of the messaging as well, as part of a much larger team. Yeah, I absolutely love being in LinkedIn messages and hearing from someone who's trying to solve a content problem, or who has, just what they think is, a really silly question about how to frame something. And look, I'm just as eager to do that with other people in the industry as well, where I've seen people share some fantastic video content, where they delve into topics, a real deep dive into something. And I love being able to go back and go, tell me your thought process behind this. Like, how did you get from there to there? Because that's the stuff that, it's the processes, I guess, are what really interest me. And that's where I think for a lot of AI tools, I think that's why I'm drawn to them a little bit as well. It's knowing how much background work goes into that.
Absolutely. Well, now, Louise, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. I
Yeah, no
mean,
problem.
you did mention you started off when it was the Gutenberg press and there was scrolls in there. Now we're in AI and it's still working and you've become the
Yeah,
sage of it all, you know what I mean? So it's all a story. I think we should lend this
that's
in
it.
in good stead and good fashion. But what do you see? You've seen all these different stages. You've been on the other
Mm,
side. You've seen entrepreneurship side. You've also seen the space you're playing in right now, bigger budgets, bigger people, bigger
yeah.
outcomes that you're utilizing, and I think you are well positioned to answer this question. Where do you see the future of all of this?
Yeah. Look, I think we're already seeing, the next kind of iterations of a lot of these tools. There's continual new updates being made and released. The AI like assistants are the things that I think we're going to notice a lot more growth in. And I think that's going to fundamentally change the way we consider, like, what we consider ownership of our own voice and our own image and how we use that. So that's a space where, look, I'm very interested, but I'm also approaching with a little bit of caution.
So are we supposed to go Hussein Bolt or fetal position?
Yeah, I think it's good to approach with our eyes open, and to, I think the reality is that the change is going to happen whether we're, trying to hide from it or not. So while I'm not saying I necessarily condone all practices, because I'm sure there's some messy and unethical ones there, for sure. But I also think, technology is moving so incredibly quickly and we can't outrun it. So we kind of have to be on board with it. And that means we have to adapt, and we have to be ready to, I guess, recognize how we can adapt while seeing value from it.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, coming from a place where technology has now become center stage. Even the phones
Mm,
that we're utilizing, that never existed before. It used to be a
yeah.
handheld. It used to be a telegram. It used to be a horse. Oh, wait a minute. It used to be a pigeon. Okay, fine. You see, so we've come a long way, and I think it's only natural for us to just look at what's coming in and see how we can adapt to it. Cars came by. Now everybody can drive. Now we've clocked that apparently you don't
Yeah.
need to drive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we went all the way trying to learn ASDF. Now you don't even need to type, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just how it's all set up. So now, Louise, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. And yeah, we should have you back on again. This was fun. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it really was for me too. Thank you so much. I absolutely hope that it's been an interesting chat.
Absolutely. Well, at the end of the day, we don't necessarily want to date this and put it in a way that if somebody's in 2058, they probably would be just watching this from their face. You know what I mean? So we don't want them to
Yeah.
think this was so far back in their time that they can't even, talk to it. But I really appreciate you giving us this, human side of what's actually happening, and especially um, given the fact that you guys are obviously leading, this whole process in the way and the creation that you guys are doing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
I'm really excited for what we created today. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. It's actually really fun to have a chat with it, to chat it through, and to to cover all the positives that it brings with it.
Absolutely. Well, like you were saying, they're taking our voice and everything else. So that's the reason why we're doing this videos, just in case in the in by tomorrow we no longer need to do this. I'll just send you a link and then you speak into it, and depending on what my avatar is doing at that particular time, you know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting times ahead, that's for sure.
For sure. And I think particularly as, there's constant articles coming out that our attention span is getting shorter and shorter. So I'm like, great, I just need, to duplicate myself so that I can do all the things that I need to do and not compromise my attention span in that time.
Oh, look at this. This video is probably about 45 minutes. And if somebody's watching this right now, thank you and pat yourself in the back, because so many people would have fallen off at the 5-second mark, not understanding, hey, are you guys going to land this plane? So to our viewers, I really hope you found this episode as enlightening and enjoyable as I did. I think I'm a pilot now. We're landing this plane.
We need to get you your wings.
Fantastic. And if you reached this part, thank you so much. Don't forget to maybe rewatch this episode for more valuable nuggets of wisdom, and maybe subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for more inspiring content like this. Until next time, it's Prosper and Louise. We're landing this plane. Bye for now.